So we've got Allison, so we have a quorum. So we can officially open the meeting and start the recording, which I think has already been recording this whole time. So that will all be on.
Oh, what a disaster.
That will be on the recording, but it shows we're trying. So
well, it does. It does. I think it shows
Yes.
a valiant effort.
All right. So welcome to the Planning Commission of Richmond meeting for 3/1/2023. It looks like we do have a quorum and we have several guests who may be here for different reasons. But welcome everybody. So Allison has her technical challenges and we do not have any logistical support tonight. It's just me and my technical skills are somewhat limited also. So I'm hoping that we can get through this okay and maybe share a screen occasionally, but I'm not counting on it. So, but this is just the opening discussion on our new topics. So there's going to be some brainstorming and hopefully we won't get too wound up here. So, all right, any adjustments to the agenda? So the agenda consists of the following. We're going to start work again on the village neighborhoods, north and south, by looking at the documents that we abandoned in 2021. We started working on our other documents that we have now moved over to the select board for their public hearing process. For various reasons, we put on hold the village neighborhoods north and south. So we're going to talk about them for a little bit. Then we're going to talk about short-term rentals, which people have been interested in thinking about, along with the whole rest of the state of Vermont and the country probably. So we'll do that. And then we're going to talk for a little bit, a short time, about the Burlington Airport's request to put some language in our zoning document. So does anyone have any changes they want to make to it?
Oh.
All right, that looks okay. So we'll proceed with that discussion. And people are here for different reasons, right? Everybody is not here for the airspace issue. I imagine Kathleen, Gary, you're here for the neighborhoods discussion. The LaFountains, you're here for the airport airspace discussion. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So we could put the short-term rentals discussion at the end if we want to do that, if we don't have any guests here who are interested in that. Gary? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here for that also.
You're here for that also?
Yeah, I'm not here for the airport, but I am for the other.
For the short-term rentals, okay.
And the residential zone.
And the residential piece. All right. Well, I guess we will proceed with the agenda as is then in that case. Does anyone want to make a comment on anything that's not on the agenda? Okay.
So,
Hearing.
I'll say I don't mind if you move the airport discussion up.
Okay.
It seems like that's going to be pretty quick.
Okay, we'll do that one then after the or we could do it first, I guess. Everybody's okay with that? People okay with that? I don't want that one to take too long. That's not our main issue here, but Kathleen, you had something to say?
I'm not sure if my comment relates to the zoning or not, but I'm going to assume it does. So if it's all right for me to make a public comment when the zoning
Okay.
is discussed.
All right, so let's talk for the 15 minutes about the airspace issue. Then we'll do that first. We'll make that number 5. And then the next 2 after that. So, all right, so a quick review of the minutes of our February 15th meeting. Any comments, corrections, adjustments, any alterations people want to make in those minutes?
No.
Planning commissioners? Okay, hearing none, we will accept those minutes into the record as written and submitted. Okay, so at the time of 7:25, we will take up this airspace issue. Okay, so for anyone who doesn't know about this issue, the background of this is that parts of Richmond lie underneath the approach for runway 33 of the airport. So the area that we're talking about is kind of over there in the Christmas Hill area, around there, Yance Hill, I guess, Jordan, where you live out that way. So the elevations there are up to 1,100 feet above sea level. Just the terrain is at 1,100 feet at its highest point. The planes, as they descend going towards the airport, go from 2,500 feet to 1,500 feet. So the airport feels that there's not that much clearance there. So they would like us to put some language in our ordinance that encourages, it can't be required by the town, but that encourages people who might be putting up a structure that might intrude in that airspace of the approach to fill out this particular Federal Aviation Administration form. So they originally asked us if we would put an airport overlay district, which actually defined the area in question. This was not popular. People did not want to be put on the map, singled out, if you like, with some kind of notice about their property, even though it didn't really require them to do anything, and it's not, it didn't penalize them in any way. But so we decided we weren't going to do that. And all that they're really asking is that we alert people who might be affected by putting something of extreme height into this airspace that they need to fill out this form. So I asked Williston, which shares this approach airspace with the Yance Hill area, and they had this language that I might be able to share if I can make it work. A very simple statement in their zoning that was not an overlay district, that was not complicated, that didn't say, a lot of anything. But, okay, so I'm sharing my screen. I've sort of lost the view of the Zoom participants. I don't know why.
I don't see it.
I don't see anything here.
You don't see anything? Okay. Am I sharing this screen? Hold on just a second. Word. Oh, wait a second. I skipped a step here, which is the screen share step. Hold on. Share screen, and it's okay. All right. Does that show up?
Ah, yep.
Okay.
Okay. So, stepping back just one
Can you
step.
make it a little bigger?
Oh,
It's small.
maybe.
If you make it full screen,
do
Virginia,
that.
maybe that'll do it.
Go to view options, Jen.
View options. Where's
That
that?
the little black tab up there, right below. Well, my screen's gonna look a little different. The black box next to the green box on top.
Black box.
See view options right below your little Hollywood squares. If you're looking at the same way I am. I've actually seen this from the folks up on Fiddlehead Lane that are building the McMansions,
Sure.
adjacent to mine and Chuck Fire's property on top, that are a
Okay.
little higher than us.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So one of the questions that people were concerned about was the fact that on the top of these hills, there are already trees that extend not into the airspace, but maybe 100 feet tall.
Mhm.
So one of the suggestions that BTV had made to us was to say anything over 35 feet tall. If people were going to build over 35 feet tall, they would need to fill out this form. We did not think they should tie it to our zoning. Williston has taken the approach of over 100 feet. If you're going to put up something over 100 feet, you're clearly going to need help, and the people who are going to help you build it are going to know that they're going to have to fill out this form. So we are mentioning it. If you are going to put something over 100 feet and you are in an area where the potential is there for it to go into the airspace, then you should fill out the form. This leaves people on their own initiative to find out where they are and if the airspace is there and to fulfill the federal requirements. But it does not require you to do, the town is not requiring you to do anything.
and
I'm not
they're not asking for, because at the end of the day, this section up here, the highest section,
yeah,
really only affects on the Richmond side myself, Dave Conant, and Chuck Fire
Mhm.
at that high point. And really the highest points where they're talking about, I believe, Chuck Fire and I kind of split that knob, and then it goes down into the Willis. There's a development company out of Shelburne, I believe, L5 Inc. owns a chunk, and that's the group that's developing that Fiddlehead Lane, you know, the high houses up there. But the
Yeah.
top part, I believe, what they're going to be concerned about is that, you know, and you can see every which way. My, I don't have a hunch, but you know, Chuck and I had talked to AT&T one time about a cell tower there, or
Yeah.
wind towers
Yeah.
there, and this is what they're trying to get ahead of to make sure that we can never do that stuff. And I say
Well,
Chuck Fire, sorry, it's Peggy Fire's estate.
right. Yeah.
She's willed that section to her grandchildren, and then I own the other half of that. And that's really my only concern is you know, I listen to the F-35 blow my head off all day long. And
Right.
not that I'm against those guys, but I got to listen to it 45 times a day
Right.
saying, fine, I'm saying why. What does the town of Richmond or myself personally have to gain from this? Nothing.
Well,
So,
there's nothing that you lose from it either. I mean, that's the thing about what they're asking us to do. There's nothing, it actually it makes no impact on us.
From Delaney Joseph.
and I know you want to keep this short, but this, you know what this feels like? It feels like the orphan stormwater runoff permits. Rod Rajinski said that we're going to take care of everybody in Richmond. The orphan stormwater runoff permits, don't worry about it. Every other development in Richmond was taken over. The trailer park, everybody else. Daniel Lane and Deer Creek Lane, he's like, you guys are on your own. And to this day, we have to hire our own engineer because we had to deal with orphan stormwater runoff permits. We have to hire an engineer every year to come in here and deal with it. But don't worry about it. There's no problem. And this is exactly what this feels like. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of that later. Yeah, we will. The residents of Deer Creek and Daniel Lane. The town of Richmond doesn't pay for that. They were able to bulldoze a culvert right through the middle of our development to add to our impervious areas. But you guys deal with the stormwater runoff permits. They were orphaned, but don't worry, it won't bother you. Well, every year we all, as a group, Daniel Lane and Deer Creek Lane, throw our money into a bucket and hire the engineer to come back and deal with that. And every other place in Richmond had that taken care of. They were grandfathered or the town took it over. And I'm not saying this is it, but it's what it feels like to me. Because if I ever want to develop here, it's one more thing to deal with.
Allison, you had your hand up first and then Lisa.
Yes, Jordan, I'm in sympathy with you listening to the F-35s or for whatever they are. They drive me bonkers. Of course, I'm a musician, so I have sensitive ears. But my son lives in that area of Williston that you're talking about. And when one of those things goes over his property, you can't even talk to somebody in the yard. I think they are the princes of obnoxity. And I don't think we should do anything to encourage them. They need to stay up as high as they can, as far away from us as possible. And I know that sounds emotional and ridiculous, but that's what I think, that's really noise pollution.
Lisa. So, and
Thank you.
Lisa is a pilot, so she knows something about the airspace question.
Okay,
Lisa, go
well,
ahead.
I can tell you what the airspace is, what it would become, that's, different. But what the airspace is a safe zone for aircraft to come down to ground level, which is where the airport is. And that's all it is. It's an imaginary cone, basically, that gets skinnier and skinnier as you get to Burlington Airport. And there are prescribed altitudes. There are stages or steps, I guess you'd say, that aircraft let down to. Each step gets lower and lower. There's a minimum altitude, and there's lateral boundaries on that, and that's required. There are instruments in the plane to tell.
You're absolutely right. And
Well,
my brother's a pilot for Heritage. I worked for FedEx for 17 years in Burlington. I get it. This isn't anything against the FAA or any of that. This is
Right.
my distrust of.
Well, let me finish, please. The airspace that they're talking about has been in place for a long time. It's published on an approach plate that anybody can look at where the properties are in Richmond that would be affected. In other words, they're underneath that cone. You know what they are. I mean, they're well identified. They're identifiable. And the aircraft going through that space may be loud, may not. That's transient. And I don't like the F-35s any more than anyone else. Until we get to the money they bring to the state. Everybody likes that. So that's why they're here. So it's a status quo that we're talking about. And I don't see that anything is going to change with this language that Virginia's trying to present to us to consider whether we should even include it in Richmond's zoning regulation. As far as I know, Virginia, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there will be any burden put on any landowner in Richmond by including this language in our zoning regulation. If we don't include the language in our zoning regulation or some other way, then there won't be any effect on individuals either, except the FAA will continue to pester, I guess, the town for something more than what we've done so far, which is nothing. So that's where we are.
Yeah, and I'm not even completely clear whether the FAA requires the filing of this form. They request
No,
the
they don't.
filing of this form.
Right.
It's requested.
That's a big difference. Yeah.
And the reason that they're requesting it is because if people build things that then actually go into the airspace and cause an accident and the plane crashes, then they will not have carried out the filing of this form, which means the FAA is going to just review the form. And so, but we're not requiring you to fill out the form. And I don't
Right.
think the FAA is even requiring you to fill out the form. They're just letting you know that there is this form that's out there, that if you don't want the planes to crash in this approach that they have, and you're going to put up something really high. I mean, it seems like it's got to be several hundred feet high to actually intrude in the airspace. But
Right.
if you're going to put it up over 100 feet, somebody is going to be involved in putting this up who knows about this kind of thing, and they're going to fill this form out. But we're not requiring it. It doesn't matter to us one way or the other whether you fill it out.
Virginia,
So,
just a little addendum to that, if I could. If someone built something very large and it did intrude on the airspace, the FAA would take action and it would have to be removed. So whatever money was spent on that is out the window. And the federal government does have precedence over our laws and state laws, especially when it's a safety concern. So that's a no-win for someone that actually does that. This forum is our local residents' opportunity to keep that from happening. They can put up anything they want, really. And if it doesn't, hang on, if it doesn't intrude into the airspace, nobody has a problem with it. That's all this does.
Mark. Thank you, Lisa.
And thank you, Lisa, because I think you address one of my other major concerns is the airport's going to keep coming back and pestering us. It's kind of one of those things that they have to check off on their box that they have all the regional towns some sort of awareness to this flight path and elevation and whatever. And so they're going to keep coming back until we put something in there. This statement that's being suggested is about as benign as it gets. It is, has zero teeth and frankly, zero effectiveness in my world, because it doesn't tell you, what areas they are. I was personally in favor of the map. I thought the map was an important thing. I think the map is worthwhile because, flight ceilings and floors are limits, but bad weather, all sorts of crazy things can happen. I think it's worth being aware that, you're on that flight path, particularly for people buying new homes. So that's my 2 cents about the step back from where we are and where I think we should be, which is even more proactive in notifying people. This thing dials it back really far. It matches Williston's guidance on this subject. So hopefully they'll leave us alone. And it's sort of a buyer beware when it comes to somebody purchasing or developing that area that's in that flight zone, because accidents happen, people drift. Good to know.
Yeah, and what I would hope, thank you, Mark, what I would hope is that people putting up things over 100 feet tall, I mean, for one thing, our zoning ordinance does limit you to 35 feet with a few exceptions and some, spires and other special effects. But if somebody's putting something up over 100 square feet, over 100 feet high, then they're going to find out if they're in a problematic place. I mean, that would be what you would hope, right?
Exactly.
So essentially
there's no way they're going to be able to develop. Excuse me, Jordan.
No, I'm sorry.
There's no way they're going to be able to develop, impact that area and develop into the flight path. But frankly, letting people know at least that part of this town, some unknown mysterious area, if you're just reading the regs, and what are the chances of anybody who's actually buying property reading the full zoning regs and finding this, obscure reference in section 411.7 that tells them that they could be buying land directly below a flight path that is at least getting close to the elevation of the basement of potential plane travel. So yeah, I think that the bare minimum, we need to move ahead with this, and I'll step back at that point. I think I've hammered my point as far as I can.
Yeah. And I've suggested that we put it in the height of structures section of our zoning, because it does relate to the height of structures. So if somebody's thinking of putting up a high structure, then it could be in the height. They could look at the height section. Kathleen.
So the only comment I had is that if this is in the height section, maybe it won't be an issue, but if someone says, oh, I can build something up to 100 feet without realizing that we have a 35-foot, in general, a maximum of 35 feet, is this with the language that's here right now? Like,
Yeah,
some,
well, they would have to read the rest of the height regulation as well, which we hope the zoning administrator would point out to them that we actually don't allow you to build anything over 35 feet unless
Yeah.
it's one of these special situations, which is what the Burlington Airport was kind of concerned about, I guess, the special situations. So Jordan, I think you had something else.
the only thing I could say, if I might, is you could add a paren after this language about the 100 feet of the proposed site lies within the approach path, and say, see section 4.11 point, whatever it is for height. You could do that. I know that's maybe overkill, but that way they know right here that they have to look at that section that talks about heights, structure heights.
Yeah, okay, well,
Mhm.
it's already in section 411, but I could say, see the remainder of section 4.11 for other height restrictions. What I think, what happened when the airport suggested that we put anything over 35 feet in our regulations, people felt that that was tied to our particular ordinance, which was not their concern, and also maybe too restrictive, since we do have some situations where we allow people to go over 35 feet. But we could
So-
certainly make sure that people read the whole height restriction. Yeah, Jordan.
So this started when I originally talked to AT&T some years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, about putting a cell tower up here. And
Oh,
ever since then, that's been the scare, because it's, I'm like, well, this is a good spot because no one could see it. And there it, you capture that whole end of Richmond. They ended up putting one down in the Versier farm that ended up helping the town of Richmond get cell service on that side of town. Perfect. It was fine. But they're scared about wind turbines and they're scared about cell phone towers right there, is what this is all about. It's not like anybody could possibly imagine putting a 30-story nursing home on the top of East Hill Road. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fear of, what happened on Camel's Hump, where they put a cell tower, and then maybe here or in wind turbines, is what this is about. And if it has to do with dwellings purely, perfect, because no one will build anything on this hill that's a dwelling other than the skyline houses that everybody seems to love so much around here. But my 58 acres, that's what if I wanted to put wind up there? I've looked at trying to put a solar field down here. I can't. What's that do to me? And that's the only thing I would ever ask is, if it has to do with dwellings, great. But I'm also, if it's just so they stop bothering us, that statement bugged me. So they stop bothering us.
Well, it's not
Well,
just
we're just
about.
going to agree to it so they stop bothering us. And I'm not trying to sound. It's fine. I was more worried, and also it should only be, if they're worried about height of things, it should really only be this piece of property that Chuck Farr, myself, and Dave Conant, and on the Richmond side of things, it shouldn't be this wide swath. They're worried about if it's a height issue. That map was pretty wide. Scott and Northern Fountain are well below 1,100 feet. They're at 800. Where my house is, they're below me. It's 750 feet. So they have this big wide map saying you can't build anything over 100 feet. That's very restrictive. When East Hill Road goes from here at 800 feet to 1,200 feet at the height where in their flight path, and anybody who lives here very, very well knows we're in a flight path. Trust me, we know. So that would be another thing. Narrow that down to you got the high section of East Hill Road in French Hill. That section maybe, but just to say they're not going to bug us, we'll agree to it. and again, I'm not on the planning commission, and I apologize I'm not at times like this, because that's frustrating to me. And I'm sorry that I'm just being vocal and I don't show up to a lot of these meetings and saying that stuff, but that's frustrating. Well, if we just say yes, they won't bother us. Like Lori LaFountain and Scott LaFountain shouldn't have to worry about this, because they don't have any property that would ever, with a 100-foot structure or a 400-foot structure, ever mess with the airport. So they're asking for this wide swath of no builds, no height, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into
Well,
it.
yeah, I mean, it's not that they're saying you can't build anything, because if you make a plan and you submit it to the FAA and it clearly shows that whatever tower you want to put is not going to intrude in the airspace, presumably it's not a problem for them. Lisa, what do you think? I mean, you know, it's possible for us to write it if instead of in the red letters, if the proposed site lies within the approach path, if we said, if the proposed structure has any potential for intruding in the airspace. I mean, you could, I suppose, put it like that, which leaves the property owner to determine whether or not, I mean, their point is that they want the FAA to be able to determine whether there's a potential. I don't think they're not going to let you do it, but if there's a potential for it to be in the airspace, then maybe they're not going to let you do it if it's going to be in the airspace. If you show them a plan which doesn't appear in any way to intrude in the airspace, then that's not going to be a problem for them, right, Lisa? Is that correct? You're muted, Lisa.
There, okay.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you. They're not dictating anything on the ground. They're not dictating any dimensions or markings or, language and deeds or anything on the ground. It's only if something comes from the ground up to a point in space that is a hazard, or they determine is a hazard. And this form will give them advance notice of something that they would pass judgment on as far as a something intruding on that airspace. And if they don't like it, they'll say so. If they have no opinion, they'll probably take longer to say they have no opinion. But that's all. They're not controlling or requiring anything on the ground. No deed restrictions, no building code, exceptions or anything. It's strictly something that, if it may intrude into the airspace, the approach airspace, that's the FAA's jurisdiction. That's what the law tells them is their job.
But if there's no deed restrictions, how would you know?
I don't follow your argument.
Well, if you follow, but if you file for sale or a building permit, if there's not something tagged on the deed in those properties, how would the developer or whoever ever know?
Know what?
Know that there's this tag to it.
There is no tag. If we put this in our zoning regulations, just something about the form, that puts anyone who's planning on building something in town, that if it's large, if the thing you're building is large, they might want to get the FAA's input before they build it. That's it.
Thank you. Allison.
I just have a question about why is the FAA asking for this? Are they trying to release themselves from any legal responsibility if there were an air accident over somebody's property? I don't. It sounds fishy to me.
Well,
it does. It just.
They just want to make sure that people are aware that there is this airspace issue. That there's an approach that planes make, or a flight path over Richmond, and that there are some parts of Richmond that are elevated so that a really, really tall structure might intrude into the airspace. They just want to make people aware of it in Richmond. So it's an educational thing, I mean, and we go back and forth whether you want educational things in your zoning regulation or you just want regulations, but that is their request, is to make people aware that there is this issue with, and it's very unlikely that anybody, even on the tallest pieces of our town, is going to put anything that reaches into the airspace. It's very unlikely, but they would like to know if you're planning to put a 400-foot wind turbine on top of the hill. They would like to know that, even a 100-foot, they would like to know that it's not 400 feet so that they have, some control over their airspace. So.
Right. Virginia, can I add just one thing? I know there's 3 hands up now, but
Yeah.
that's exactly right, Virginia. They don't have any authority over Richmond's use of land. They don't, and they're not trying to with this. Their authority is to protect the safety of air traffic. And if something popped up today in that airspace that they're supposed to protect, they would take action immediately. That's going to cause a lot of anguish for whoever put that thing up. So to prevent that, they're being kind of, proactive to at least give people a chance to not wind up in that position. Get a review by them of whether something does or does not intrude in the airspace before it's built. Where it's just on paper, it's free, essentially, they'll do the review. And that's the end of it, unless you have something that's large enough to be a problem, and then I don't know where it goes from there. But that's what they're trying to do.
Mark.
Thank you. I do, first of all, want to defend my position and the perspective of putting this in there because people keep asking about it and pestering us to do it. And the reason why I want to address this issue and be done with it is because we're now 40 minutes into a conversation that was supposed to take 15 minutes. And over the last 4 or 5 years, I can't tell you how many hours out of our measly 4 hours a month that we get to talk about stuff, how much we have spent on this one issue. And the fact that we've dialed it back so far from the original requests of maps and whatever, to put this little bit of language in there so that we can move forward and not have the Burlington Airport come back at us consistently and hassle us about doing some kind of language. So now it's there. We can move on, I hope, at some point. I'm really looking forward to making a motion shortly, if anybody else has any other comments. But this doesn't do anything. It doesn't have any control over Earth. It's just making one slight level of awareness for people who haven't lived here for 30 years, but who are perhaps looking to buy a home for the first time and moving from California, to be aware that this is a factor in our community. I don't think it does any harm, and I hope we can be done with this guy tonight. So please let me know when I can make a motion.
Okay, any last comments? Because at this point, we're either going to table it to some other meeting, or Mark is going to make a motion. Any other last minute comments? Do the LaFountains have any comments? I don't see are they still here?
No
Scott.
comment. Just listening.
Okay, very good.
I do. The planes do fly very low over our house, and it's annoying.
Yeah, we can't do anything about that, Laurie. We can't do
know.
anything about it.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to move ahead with adopting this language as written. Now, I don't necessarily want to warn this with its own meeting, but I'd like to put this topic to rest somehow. Don't suppose a motion to carry it forward. We'll do that if somebody else decides to show up in open comment next week or next meeting and further this discussion.
Okay, so you're making a motion to adopt this language into our zoning.
And then, and move it forward with the next set of regulations proposed.
Okay, and we would have to run it by our attorney probably at some point, so hopefully, they're okay with that, but
I'll second
Okay.
the motion, Virginia.
okay. So seconded by Lisa. All right, any further discussion? Planning commissioners, all in favor of adopting this language into our zoning ordinance as written, section 4.11.7, should say aye or raise your hand so I can be sure. All right,
Aye.
aye, and I'm an aye. Who are we missing? Allison, where's Allison?
I'm not an I.
Okay, so we have 4 ayes. All opposed should say
So she's-
nay or raise your hand. Is that Allison in there? Wait, I've lost you, Allison, here.
Yeah, I'm opposed.
You're a nay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the motion passes. We're going to adopt this language into our zoning ordinance. We will run it by the town attorney, and I'm planning to tell the airport folks that we have adopted this language and that we hope it's satisfying to them. But Williston says they've never complained about their language, so I'm hoping that it's, and I'm sorry I can't make the planes fly higher, but not in our power. So, all right. So 8 o'clock, we're going to move on to our next topic, which is the village residential neighborhoods. Okay, so the task there is just to review this stuff that's been a year and a half in the making. Let me see if I can get rid of this screen here, this screen sharing business. Okay. So the task here is to think about where we are with these 2 districts. We're talking about the northern neighborhoods of the village and the southern neighborhoods of the village. We conducted some outreach prior to the housing consultant that the housing committee obtained with a grant prior to her report. So we kind of want to think about this information in, conjunction with that report. And I put out some questions that we'd maybe like to answer. I mean, I think the goal tonight is to decide what further information we want. Do we want to talk to these neighbors again? What would we like to do here? What further information do we need? Would we like to review Brandy Saxton's housing report? So the 2 districts are the northern neighbors, and I sent you the last version that I could find of these 2 neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
The northern neighbors include Baker Street, Tilden Ave, Pleasant Street, Church Street, Esplanade, Lemeroy Court, Borden Street, and the interior sections of Burnett Court and Browns Court, portions of the Jericho Road and West Main Street. I did find a map. I don't know if we want to look at it. It doesn't seem to be quite correct. But if people would like to look at the general area, we can do that. Do you want to do that? You want to just kind of see if we can see what we're talking about here?
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Okay. Let's see.
I will say while you're looking it up though, that it does seem to me to make sense in the next stage is to reach out again, before before we really make too many more decisions. We've honed this pretty well off of the previous conversations with the neighborhoods and residents, and from that we got to here. So
Yeah.
now, you know, I think we're kind of comfortable. I'd say we're ready to get any more further input from the community and make sure that they're on board with this and fully aware that we want to move forward. But I think we're in a pretty good starting place.
Yeah, well, you know, we did work on this quite a bit before we moved over to the mixed use neighborhoods. But we didn't really look at the housing consultant report, so I thought that might be something we would want to think about as well. And also getting some more input. So this map, so here's the traffic light right here. Can you see my mouse? Does my
Yeah.
mouse show up?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So here's the traffic light. Here's the downtown district. Here's the new residential commercial district, this light green, and it now includes the Goodwin Baker Building and Millet Street and the properties facing Jericho Road. So these areas outlined in black are now part of this RC district. So what we're talking about for the neighborhoods north is the Baker Tilden area and the interior lots up here from Burnett Court and Browns Court. And Pleasant Street and Lemroy down here. This is Borden, you know, Borden Street at the end of Railroad Street. That's a residential part of the neighborhood. Church Street and Esplanade down here. These condos, which have a special, you know, the footprint is the residential part, the rest is ag res. So that is what we're talking about. So any questions about that? And formerly, all of this was called high density residential. It wasn't very high density, but it's all the rest of the residential areas that go up into Southview and Hidden Pines and Valley View. Those are all high density residential. They have currently a density of, I think 3 units per acre, but we are proposing a higher density for these residential neighborhoods in the village. So one of the things that we need to make sure we feel that we have right is that we are wanting to separate out this neighborhood from the rest of the high density areas. And if we look at the map of the village, of the whole town, so you can see here are these neighborhoods that we're talking about in here, and all of this stuff is high density residential. So we want to make sure that that's what we want to do. We want to separate out the village neighborhoods for special treatment that might be different from these other parcels that are up beyond, you actually can't see it, but up in Southview and Hidden Pines, Valley View, these lots along here. So that's one question that we have. The southern neighborhoods, this map is not quite correct either, but so down here's the Man and Machine, the Round Church Corners complex. It's commercial, little commercial area. This is, we have made this residential commercial to match this, which was residential commercial. You can ignore the Far Farm. We haven't done anything with that. That's still in ag res. So we had originally looked at the Thompson Road, the lots on Thompson Road. These lots, you know, coming down to Cochrane Road, the lots along the initial part of Cochrane Road. And this area in white, at one point we thought of having a round church neighborhood, but subsequently kind of added that to the neighborhoods south. So it's this part of Cochrane Road, this part of Bridge Street, and Thompson Road, essentially. And the neighborhood south had some different dimensional
Virginia,
requirements.
we're not seeing the map you're looking at.
Oh, you're not seeing
We're
that?
looking at the north end.
Okay, you're still looking at the north end. I think I forgot to
It's displayed.
share this one. Okay. Let me try this again. Okay, screen share.
Fortunately, we all know the streets around there.
This one and this one. All right, can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, sorry about that. My technical skills, not good. Okay, so here's the Round Church Corners complex, man and machine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We have made these into RC. These lots were already RC down here. So this commercial district is now surrounded by RC. That's good planning. And the yellow and white are what we're talking about for the southern neighborhood. So this is Bridge Street. This is Gary's house up here. This is the Peaceable Kingdom. Kathleen is along here. This is Richmond Terrace. So that's what we're talking about for the southern neighborhoods. And this area used to be ag res with 1 acre minimum lot size. And we had proposed a ½ acre to take a small step towards allowing greater residential density. We had gone from 1 acre to a ½ acre. In the northern neighborhoods, we had gone from 1/3 of an acre to 1/4 of an acre. So one difference between the southern neighborhoods and the northern neighborhoods is the southern neighborhoods are at a ½ acre density, and the northern neighborhoods are at 1/4 of an acre minimum lot size. So we want to make sure that that is what we want to do. Is that the way we want it to be? You know, there are other options. That was what we arrived at in our desire to take kind of small steps from where we are to allow some greater density. So
I have a question.
yeah, Allison, go ahead.
This area that you're pointing to, that area there, I'm trying to picture, where is that with regards to Richmond Terrace?
Richmond Terrace is here, this lot right here.
Oh, okay, so this is across the road. Is this very close to the Far Farm? Or
This is the
where-
Far Farm.
It is, yeah. Because do we know how they feel about that?
About Richmond Terrace?
No, about their farm being zoned this way.
We are not talking about their farm. That's what
Oh.
I'm saying. This
Yeah.
map is just the nearest I could find, but we are not dealing with their farm at all. I mean, this is where, from a time when we thought we might put this into the RC district, but we never did that. So this is just
Okay.
ag res. Shouldn't be green. It should be whatever color ag res is.
Well, I think it says, oh, no, it says residential commercial.
Yeah, see, this is,
Yeah, that.
so I want you to not think about that. The
Oh,
Far Farm is not involved.
okay.
Okay, so we're talking about the yellow. The yellow and
Okay.
the white
Uh-huh.
is what we're talking about here. And you can ignore the rest of this over here.
Okay.
Does that make sense, Allison?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
Um,
don't think about this at all. This farm, we're not going there yet.
well, right, okay. I'm just trying to exactly picture. I guess,
Okay, so
you know, it's really hard when you look at these maps sometimes. It's sort of
Yeah.
bottom side up to how you feel it is.
Okay, well, if you start at man and machine right here, okay?
Yes,
This is man and machine. This little
okay,
pink
yeah,
area is man and
Right.
machine and the grooming shoppy and, you know, Stone Corral. This is Far Road, that small road there with a daycare on the corner.
right, okay, got it.
Daycare on the corner.
Yeah, yeah.
There's condos here.
And where's Richmond Terrace?
Richmond Terrace is here. It's
All
up
right.
Thompson Road.
Thompson Road.
Okay.
This lot is Sterling House, which is
Mhm.
also, it's a supported residence. You may
Yes.
never have seen it if you've never been up there. It's very well concealed off this little
Yeah.
Far Road.
Mhm.
But if you go up Thompson Road, up to the town garage up here,
Yeah, okay.
you go past this lot, which is Richmond Terrace, which might have originally come out of the Far Farm. I don't know. Gary might know if this was originally part of the Far Farm. I don't know.
I don't know either. I know my uncle lived there.
Gary, do you know you're muted?
I didn't, but yes. I'm pretty sure it did come off the Far Farm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks to me like it was carved out of the Far Farm.
Yeah.
So, any other questions about the map? And I can take them away. Lisa?
Well, I don't have a map question exactly, but you want me
Okay.
to ask it and see if it's a map question?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. I guess, you know, I'm trying to see the contrast. Well, I see there is a contrast between the north residential area, you know, between Main Street and the river, and then the south residential area, which we're looking at here. But why is that? I mean, this north side's was developed first, I assume. It was easier to develop. It's pretty well built out from what I see. We've talked about infill development with the, you know, well, with some of the changes we've proposed for that district. But why would we not want this south area, south of the bridge, to go a similar path? I mean, maybe there is a reason, but I don't know what it is.
Well, I can tell you what the discussion was like at the time, which
Uh-huh.
is, first of all,
Mhm.
that our goal is not to be too shockingly different from what there was before. This
Okay.
area was ag res. The minimum lot
that's
size
valid.
was 1 acre. We went to a half acre. The properties are set back. They have bigger front lawns.
Mhm.
They are more looking like they fit on the lot size that they are.
Okay.
Up in the northern area, the lots are much more village-y.
Right.
They
Mhm.
were high-density residential instead of ag-res, and
Right.
they're closer to the sidewalk. They're more neighborhoody, if you want to look at it like that. And the starting minimum lot size was 1/3 of an acre.
Right.
So to allow a little more housing, which has been in our mind this whole time of redoing these zones,
Mhm.
was to go to 1/4 of an acre up in the northern areas.
Okay.
So we were not intending necessarily for this area to become looking like the other areas. And, you know, the folks who live down here, in a minute, we would like to have them talk about this, but
Okay. Well, thank you. I just that clears it up for me. I was
I have
wondering, and there is a
another
reason. So
question.
yeah.
I-
Allison,
Yes, this area that we've turned into 1/4 acre, does that have town sewer?
both of these areas have town water and sewer,
Okay.
the northern and the southern neighborhoods.
Mhm.
So, yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
And, you know, I mean, our housing people, the people who are promoting more housing to to meet the housing crisis would like possibly to see
Sure.
the southern neighborhood have smaller lot sizes. We have made some changes with our mixed use, such as 2 primary residential structures on a lot that we're going to need to consider and talk about for these 2 neighborhood districts. We didn't talk about them before because we hadn't done anything with them before. So, you know, there may be some other ways that we're considering allowing increased density besides just changing the minimum lot size. Lisa, is that a new hand or the same old hand?
Oh, sorry. It's somebody else's hand, I think.
Okay,
Disembodied hand. I'll take that out of there.
all right. So anyone would like to make any comments since we're just kind of brainstorming? Gary?
So, first, just to clear up something Lisa said, actually the area around the round church is where Richmond began. And it wasn't until the railroad came through in 1849 that that part of town really took off. So that part of town in general developed, 40, 50 years later.
Okay. Well, that's a lot of a head start for the other side. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and one thing I'd really like to understand before I kind of make the comment I wanted to make is when we talk about on the other side, quarter acre for a single family, but we're really talking about a quarter acre for a duplex.
Mm-hmm.
So we're really not talking about 4 units an acre. We're really talking about 8 units an acre.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And I think we need to keep that in mind because one thing to visualize 4 units an acre, it's another to visualize 8 units an acre. In my mind, it's a big change,
Mm-hmm.
or it could be a big change. In general, I'd like to say that I kind of feel like I've spent my whole life trying to stop change in the village. And I have to say over the last year or so, I've kind of changed that view a lot. Partly, I think it started with a housing study, but I think it mainly comes from some tenants I've had in the duplex on the corner of Huntington and Richmond. Generally we get young people in their late 20s, early 30s that stay there for a number of years, really want to live in Richmond, go to great extremes to try to find a place to live in Richmond and eventually give up and move out of town. And in most cases, they're really great people. I hate to see them go. They would be big assets to the town. So that has kind of changed my mind. The other thing that's kind of changed my mind is developing Peaceful Kingdom, which is, if anybody doesn't know,
Here.
it's that plus the white lot on the corner where
Here.
Dan lives in part of it. So in general, what that has been approved at is roughly, just in general, kind of 1/8 acre house lot with a combined common land that if you divided it between the approved lots would be roughly an 1/8 acre. So, one way to look at it is in total, that's a single family home on a 1/4 acre lot. And I think it works really well. I mean, as far as I know, people are happy with that size. A lot of people that have looked at them and have approached me about building something for them there, live on a lot outside the village. They want to move in. They don't necessarily want to own an acre or more and have a big mowing bill. So I think I've started to think that if you actually had a 1/4 acre that was per unit, that's a pretty good size. There's room for a garage, there's room for, in general, not always. So I just like to say that I've kind of changed my view from what I've spent my whole life feeling on that. And I don't know exactly what I think works here yet. I think as we work through the process, it might get clearer, but I do think, I feel like it's selfish to try to just keep this part of the town basically the way it is, which is what I've hoped to do my whole life up till now.
Wow, okay.
Thank you, Gary.
Yeah, great, thanks. Kathleen,
So, I just had a question and then I had a couple comments, but isn't the half acre proposed for this part of the village right now? Isn't that equivalent to quarter acre per dwelling unit, what Gary was just saying?
well, you could put a duplex or now, well, you could put a duplex on your half acre. So you
But
could
you
call
couldn't
that,
do two, you couldn't do two single families under what you currently proposed or proposed last year.
right.
Yeah.
In the residential commercial districts that we have forwarded to the select board, they haven't been approved by the select board yet, but we have allowed for essentially a duplex without adjoining structure. So two principal residences, two principal residential structures. So you could have two principal residential structures, or you could have a duplex on your half acre with this proposal.
If you adopted that, so then you would have.
So you'd have 4 units per acre.
Okay. So the only comments, I know there'll be a lot more discussion about the density and such, is to just bear in mind that there are resource constraints in a number of areas in the village, including here. You know, we have wetlands, past 2 wetlands, we have floodplain and when and even steep slopes, but probably doesn't affect very much of that, of the area you're talking about. I just want people to bear in mind that there are some natural resource constraints, and also the more development that we have in place, which I know we will have it, but our roads don't even, you know, I don't think they meet the town, the public works specs. We don't have any infrastructure for sidewalks. And we want it to be a walkable village. So I'm just concerned about zoning to significantly higher levels when we don't, as a town, we haven't looked at the livability if you add you know, people and housing units and buildings and businesses, etc. I'm just concerned that we don't have the entire piece assembled for what this is gonna, how this is gonna affect people.
Yeah, so just a couple of thoughts, Kathleen. I do always feel when we talk about increasing density that we need to say there are many other constraints besides just the zoning and the density and the lot size that you have to meet, including natural resource constraints, parking. I mean, you know, you have to meet all of the zoning requirements. So just because we say that we're allowing a certain density, it doesn't mean that density is going to be arrived at, because there are many other constraints, as Kathleen is pointing out. One thing that the Planning Commission has considered on and off, and Lisa is a big fan of this, is creating an official map, which is not a zoning map, but the official map for the town has all the proposed infrastructure. So for instance, you know, we would outline where we will want the sidewalks to be, you know, where we will want the open space to be, where the parks or the public space is to be. So And when Ravi was here, we talked more about that, and we're kind of trying to get going on that project. That's a pretty big project to make an official map, and, you know, requires charrettes and lots of public outreach. But once you have it in place, you do have kind of more of an overall vision of what things are going to look like. So if you are increasing density, where are the sidewalks? As you pointed out, Kathleen, you know, we need to know that. So that is something that the Planning Commission could consider taking up again, is the creation of an official map. Other towns have it. It's a useful tool, apparently. We just never have been able to do it. We haven't thought about it. Somebody else had a comment. Mark, you had a comment, I think.
I did, yes, thank you. But honestly, you did a great job addressing the points I wanted to make about other constraints. And I also, just on a sidebar, wanted to just add in support of Gary's position that, I mean, it's acknowledged, yes, he has land in that area and he could benefit from the development opportunities, but we have to look at this as this region as the last opportunity to practically expand the water and sewer district, which benefits all the village residents and hopefully decreased rates, and also improves the crazy situation we have with housing costs and housing availability. If we're going to make a denser area, and I know we're talking about that in the other areas, the AR and all of those, I'm looking forward to those conversations, but here we are looking at a water and sewer serviced region. And yes, it was in 1 acre at one point, right now, but is that practical for the goals that we've set out in our town plan and other zoning initiatives to only stop at half an acre? Does it make sense to go to a 1/4 acre? You know, in my view, right now, I'm saying yes. I think this is a conversation that, again, we need to have with the neighborhood, because they are the ones who should have the strongest voice in how this gets developed within reason. But I'm hoping that we can convince them that a higher density will really have a benefit for the town and economy overall.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Lisa. And then Allison.
Thank you.
Mark, I think you put that really well. Thank you. So it's a little bit related to what I wanted to say is about an official map. Yeah, I've been harping about that. I know it's not simple, and you know, it's going to cost money too. So, and it doesn't show anything immediately, but wherever we have development in the future that doesn't exist at the moment, an official map can guide that with a lot less uproar than trying to bulldoze existing houses or put a road where nobody expected one to go or anything like that. It avoids a lot of the disruption of growth by planning it ahead of time before it exists. It's a hard job, but for example, if we needed another road, east-west road on the south side of the river, where would it go? You know, if we needed one. Well, right now we could mark out a right-of-way. It's nothing on the ground, it's just on paper, but we could reserve that. So when growth does occur, we keep it free. Utility easements, where should they go? Would there ever need to be a substation of some sort to power this Richmond in the future? I don't know. You know, there's all kinds of things that can go into an official map that then become imaginary barriers to, I shouldn't say barriers, but imaginary things to work around in the future. So that's all. But it would be quite a job to get one. I think we really would benefit from it in the future. So thank you.
Yeah, and it would require a planner, which we currently don't have. But we hope to have one fairly soon, a planner. And once we're really comfortable with the planner and
Yeah,
you know, the
if we,
other things that we're doing,
if,
you know,
if we
that may,
embark on an official map, maybe a planner will seek us out because they like that kind of stuff. So, yeah,
yeah,
kind
well,
of
they have to do
dangle,
other
dangle the
things as
official map.
well.
Mhm. Yeah.
All right, Allison.
Thank you, Virginia. I wanted to mention to Mark that I thought he phrased that really well too. And I'm interested, I don't want to put Kathleen on the spot, but if she lives in that area, I think you still live there, right, Kathleen? Near
Yes,
the,
yeah,
yeah, I
yes,
thought, yeah, and I'd be interested to know her take on it. Something that, of course, I think about this because I live in this old house that's right practically on top of the road because that's, you know, it was built before the road. And some of these really nice homes that are in that area actually date from before cars. And they were put near a thoroughfare sort of way so that people could walk and you know, horse and buggy or whatever. It's not the same as the kind of traffic that we have now. So in laying out for the future, I think we kind of have to keep in mind that we either have to have a wider road or wider space in you know, that does have to be accounted for in some way. So I guess, you know, maybe I'll just for myself, I go down there and walk around a bit and think. But Kathleen, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I would be interested in what you think. If you don't want to speak, it's fine.
No, I guess getting back to what I said earlier. Let's say Thompson Road, I mean, all the roads in that area. It's challenging. It's challenging for the traffic right now. It's challenging.
Yeah.
For pedestrians, bicyclists, people who you know, have kids, like on our street, Thompson Road, people sometimes are out walking just between the neighbor each house, and to imagine a lot more vehicular traffic is problematic, and people in the neighborhood have talked about that. So it's, I think that's why going ahead with the zoning with significantly higher densities or changes in land use that allow a lot more traffic, which I know you're not proposing here, but one time we were thinking about it, that can have a real impact on people who live in the neighborhood. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and that's why I've been attending the meetings, and we'll definitely let all my neighbors know so that everyone can participate. They're very concerned about the zoning.
Mhm.
It's been
Yeah.
quite a while since it's been on people's radar, but
Yeah.
there were pretty good consensus about not making it significantly more dense than it is right now. But a further discussion will be definitely appreciated with the neighbors.
Yeah, well, and thank you for keeping them informed a little bit, Kathleen. Will you know, that will be helpful in proceeding. All right. Anybody else want to make any sort of initial comments? I think we'll maybe wrap this part of the discussion up for the moment. And for next time, kind of, I'm going to try and get some new maps made, at least for what we're thinking. Try to think in your own mind what the answers are to those questions that I posed in the memo so that we know where we're starting from exactly. And make sure that we are still in agreement over our initial assessment. Kathleen, you had another comment.
Yes, thank you. This was what I had wanted to just bring up in general, is that I'm sure you're all aware that the legislature is considering perhaps some state laws that would would usurp whatever zoning regulations are in place for certain types of activities, including housing. And some of the that I've seen, although I have not kept up with it recently, might allow for a density or a bonus in building height, greater density, or would outright allow buildings to be 5 stories tall. Just something to be aware of, because we do have the 35-foot height. And I guess my request would be for the planning commission to, talk to the fire department and find out. The reason we have a restriction is because our fire trucks can only service up to 35 feet. That's what I understood at least. And what will we do if the state has regulations that require us to go above 35 feet? How will we be able to provide fire service or other, there might be other things I'm not aware of, but certainly fire service could be an issue. So I just mentioned that so that if there are appropriate ways to talk to a representative or to members of the legislature about that being a problem, after we find out if it would be a problem from the department perspective. So I wasn't sure when to bring this up, but I thought I would just take advantage of the meeting.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I do know that whenever we talk about this height question, because the affordable housing people are always talking to us about going higher. And the people at regional planning say, well, you have, a mutual aid with Williston, they have a ladder truck, and, we have held on jealously guarding our 35-foot height, so we wouldn't have to buy a ladder truck in Richmond. But there are, these other alternatives like the mutual aid with the other ladder trucks, if that should come to pass. I don't know. There are a lot of other things in the Bongart's bill, which is got a lot of housing components that's currently at the legislature, that we have actually addressed in our RC district. The 3 to 4 unit buildings, allowing more units, allowing greater density, ADUs. Most of the things that are in that bill, we felt pretty good about because we had addressed them based on our housing consultant in the RC districts. So anyway, we don't know where it'll go and, what authority the state will take there. I know that there are legislators who feel that that their efforts to persuade towns to allow increased housing density have failed. They can't persuade people, so that they're thinking of imposing these statewide mandates. Anyway, we'll see where it goes. It's not, hasn't been finalized yet at all. So
Virginia?
Yes.
I think 7 Days reported, I think maybe last week, that part of that bill is that if you're on public water and sewer in the village, they're going to require 4 units per acre.
Yeah, and that's what our housing consultant told us last year. She said that was coming, that it's not going to be possible to maintain these lower densities, and that, like duplexes, which we allow where there are single family homes, 3 and 4 units may be required to be allowed where there are single family homes. So anyway, we'll see. Okay, so I think we should just spend a few minutes talking about our other topic that we had for the day, which is the short-term rentals at 8:45. And so this is a brand new topic for us. We're going to just be introducing it tonight. This week, there was a great article in 7 Days that has lots of great articles in it, but about short-term rentals and, what towns want to do about them. whether it is a problem already, whether towns want to be proactive. I guess there are 14 towns or so in Vermont. I tried to look them all up for this meeting, but I haven't really finished that work. Some towns are taking the approach of just creating a registry so that people who have short-term rentals have to register so that the towns can understand whether it's a problem or not. You know, obviously there are two sides to the short-term rental question. The negative is that it does take away long-term rental housing and possibly house sales as well. What people like about it is they can rent out space and make some extra income. So a lot of towns have been grappling with it. Burlington has created a framework for short-term rentals and a short-term rental, you know, ordinance. Obviously, they're bigger than we are. Some of the smaller towns, like the towns, especially around resort towns, like, you know, near Stowe hasn't taken it up, but towns that are near there where lots of their housing has become short-term rentals are taking different approaches. You know, some are requiring the owner to live there. Some are requiring that they pay for a license in town. So I think we want to look at all those issues. So what I'd like to understand is how people would like to proceed with this issue. You know, do people want to try to find out what all the other towns do? There is state authorization to regulate short-term rentals. There are some things that are required statewide, like paying meals and room tax. So any comments just as an introduction to this topic? Lisa.
Thank you. You know, I've been reading a lot. I've read the article in 7 days. I've read other articles too. And Virginia, I think really all of the root of all the problems that seem to come up from short-term rentals, whether it's noise or vacancies or eliminating or competing with affordable housing. I think all of those can be addressed best by requiring any short-term rental property requiring to have the owner living on the premises. Now, obviously not in the same unit, but if somebody wants to convert a portion of their home into a short-term rental or rent out their basement, which they're not using anymore because the kids moved out, into a short-term rental, fine. If they live there, it's up to them to keep a lid on it. And if there's a complaint, you know who to talk to. And I think it allows people to use space that they have for income generation. So I'm fine with that. And it also keeps somebody who owns the results or the consequences on the premises. And it keeps us out of the business of having to manage rentals. I don't think the town is going to not set up to do a very good job of that. And this gives people maximum freedom. They don't have to register, they just do it. If we want a registry, maybe that's not a bad idea, but the BRBs, BROBs, or whatever they are.
B&Bs.
VRBOs, yeah, B&Bs, sorry. The BBDs, whatever they call those have their own kinds of problems. There's a framework, a structure set up by those rental agencies who link providers with customers, and they seem to kind of back away when it comes to solving any problems. It leaves it to the locals, the neighbors, you know, our neighbors, our town, to really clean those problems up. So let's not even go there. Let's have the requirement that the owners of the property live there, however they want to do that. And if they have a rental space, have at it. Just my thought.
Yeah, well, that does seem to be the way some towns are going. And what
Right.
that prevents is the investor-owned houses that are
That's a big one
the
right
whole
there. Yeah.
house or multiple houses or
Mhm.
multiple properties that are owned by someone who lives in Colorado
Exactly.
is doing this as a commercial enterprise. So that helps with that. Oh, the other question I forgot to mention that people should think about is whether we want to do this through an ordinance, a standalone ordinance, or through the zoning. And we're hoping to get a little regional planning help with deciding that. Revy was thinking it would be better to have an ordinance, but other towns are doing it through their zoning. So
That's more flexible. I mean, for one thing, if it turns out to need to be tweaked, it's a lot easier to tweak an ordinance.
it's a separate thing. Yeah, I like the fork coming up into the picture, Lisa.
Oh, this? Oh,
Oh,
I don't know. My left hand isn't attached to my right hand. I don't know what's going on
okay.
here.
Mark, you want to make a comment?
Yes, thank you. Would an ordinance have the same staying power, and who would have the authority of initiating that ordinance? Are you saying that we should have the select board take up the topic, or are you suggesting that we
No, we would write the
evaluate
ordinance.
I'm sorry, evaluate the situation and then present different options to the select board of where they want to go with it? 'Cause I
Yeah,
would like
well,
to dig into this more and have a deeper conversation and
oh, definitely.
a bigger part of the community in this discussion. Certainly like Lisa's points about, I mean, owner occupied is a great way to do it. We did that for our ADUs. And I think that is a very strong encouragement for home ownership, which is, you know, what builds the middle class, honestly, in my opinion. So what we can do to promote that, we have, I want to do on the local level as much as possible. I think it's a good goal to promote and foster. So whatever we can do with that, and let's investigate it. Let's see what's going on and what the options are out there. And, you know, down the road, hopefully the select board will be, you know, engaged, as they often are in our most high level topics, and we can figure out the best, most effective way to address short-term rentals.
Yeah, well, I mean, my goal was for the planning commission to do the work and to develop the ordinance or the zoning, whichever we think is best, you know, for us to decide what the best way to approach this, with advice, obviously, and for us to make a proposal, a complete proposal to the select board, you know, like an amendment to the zoning or a freestanding ordinance is. So I'm hoping that we'll do it and that they'll just put it through their public hearing process. But so anyway, Gary.
Virginia, so I think you told me several months ago that when you had an intern, the person had kind of looked into how many units we have in town. And I was wondering, is that the data on that available? Because to me, it'd be really interesting to know, how many of those are like investor owned? How many of those are renting a room in their house? So if they didn't have the right to rent that room short term, it's not like they're going to rent it long term as an apartment. So, you know, the housing issue of not having that additional housing isn't there. I'd like to see that data and maybe spend a little time talking to the owners of these and just see how that all breaks out, to see what kind of problem we do have.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can get her data, but I'm not sure it's that granular. I don't know that it's any more than like ads and, you know, like ads on Airbnb, the numbers. So
Well, even
whether
that'd be a useful starting point anyway, if whatever she has.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we can do that. I'll get that. Okay. Any other comments? You know, clearly there's going to be a lot of work to do this, but I think most of us think it's worthwhile to be kind of proactive and not let the problem get bad before we think about it. So, Lisa.
Yeah, what Gary was saying, that's interesting. If we have some, existing conditions data like that, we'd be crazy not to use it if we can get a feel for even what some of the issues are, or some of the solutions are, or currently, or in the recent past. That would be a nice head start for wherever we decide to go. So
Mhm.
yeah, if that data can be dug out, and I guess we can all look at it and just get a pulse on how useful or not it is.
Mhm.
It's
Well,
free.
yeah, and I mean, that kind of data is what the towns that are going towards having a registry are after. They're
Mhm.
after keeping track of the situation, so they can see how it is changing, how many people are renting out rooms in their house. And,
Mhm.
I think at least one of the towns I looked at, you don't have to register if you rent out like one room in your house for less than 3 weeks in any year or something, so there was a bottom
Mhm.
level of people that would have to register. But the other
Mhm.
thing about registering is the town knows where, if there's a party house, if there's a problem, the town knows where it is and they have a contact. A lot of people
Good
who
point. Yeah.
advise about this say you need contact people if the owner is not going to live there. I mean, if
Right.
we
Oh,
forbid anything
absolutely.
except
Yeah.
ones where the owner lives there,
Mhm.
the other thing is you have to define what it means for the owner to live there. Does the
Mhm.
owner have to be there when the rental is happening? Or could the owner be in Florida, for instance? But the owner really
Mhm.
lives in Vermont for 7 months out of the year and then rents it out the rest of the time. All of those things will have to be defined. And
Mhm.
if the owner
Mhm.
is not actually there at the time of the rental, you need a contact person. You need somebody you can get a hold of if there's a problem. So that is helpful if you have a registration system. Mark? You're muted, by the way.
Excuse me. Glad that was muted.
You haven't said anything yet, but I can tell you're going to.
Well, covered, yeah, safe. Thank you. What I was trying to say was that I think this is an important topic. I regret that there's only the bare minimum of a quorum tonight of the commission to go. And I know, we're going to have a lot more diverse opinions as we expand this conversation. And not the least of which, important to point out, is that we're still out of town planner who would be able to help facilitate. I just heard this concept of finding out all this metadata that we have on residences and whatever. I'm like, oh my God, I wouldn't want to have to try and dig all that up from the multiple documents, whatever. And I know, Virginia, you're doing a great job running the show by yourself for these past couple months now. It's not an easy task. But I guess what I'm saying is my biggest point is that I think that this conversation can go in parallel with our conversations about the different zoning districts and our public outreach and that kind of thing. I really think that these two zoning districts and our short-term rental issues are, for me, certainly the three biggest topics that warrant our attention, and I think we can move forward on all three of them simultaneously. And that would be a lot more facilitated with the with the new planning commissioner. So I know we're running past the time or whatever, but I was just wondering if you had any additional information on our job search.
Well, we did a second round. Josh and I did a second round of interviews, and we do have all three of them had something to offer, but we have one that we're particularly interested in, and we're hoping to move on that soon. So
Timeline till they're on board. I know this is all speculative.
yeah, it would be a few weeks, even if this individual accepted the job offer. If we made the job offer, we have a little more conversation to go, but So a few weeks, it'll be a few weeks.
May on the outside, you'll be staffed again with some support to help you dig into all this metadata
Yeah,
and
right.
manage the Zoom calls and meetings.
Teach me how to
That's-
share my screen. No,
Right.
right. Yeah, so it's coming along. I think we have potential good candidates. It wasn't a hot item. We didn't have lots of candidates, but
Nobody has a lot of candidates.
nobody has a lot of
I could go on a
candidates.
sidebar, and I won't
Mhm.
because I'd like to, but
Right.
that's a tough one. So I'm glad
If we throw in free housing, it'll help.
Our
right.
top
Yeah.
candidate from our first round of searches didn't think we were offering him enough money. So
Well,
that's going to happen because we're little Richmond and we can't offer anybody enough money, police chief or,
which is-
or a place to live either. So,
you lose good talent on that, I'm afraid.
yeah.
But that's just a fact of life, the way we operate. I mean, let's not get into that.
Yeah.
Um,
We are trying to make more housing so that at least there's housing for people who would like to come here and take a job. So
here,
anyway.
here.
All right.
Would you be happy to make a motion, or did you have?
I just want to make sure there's nothing else anybody wants to bring up, any other old or new business or topics that need a very few words spoken about them. If there's none, then a motion would be fine.
So the Ides of March will are we going to start to reach out to people? Because I personally think that we're at the point where we can begin to reach out to the community again and bring in involvement from them and start to move these other two districts forward. So
Well, I would really like to sit with the documents that we have already and really go through them next time at our next meeting. Line for line, is this what we want? Is this still what we want? This was the information that we got. Are these the dimensional requirements? Are these the uses that we want? Are these the development standards? We changed a lot from the way we wrote these districts to the RC districts. We added all those development standards. We ordered multifamily, we added multifamily housing standards to make the multifamilies into good neighbors. We added 2 principal residential structures on a lot. We need to think about that. Would we like to have that in these districts? So if we could take the time to go through what we have and see if there are any changes that we would like to make, that we know we'd like to make, and then maybe reach out to people when we have something to bring them new besides this. Yeah, Mark.
sounds like a great plan. I think that's more than reasonable for the Ides of March meeting. But would you be able to, and I know this is an ask because I've been absent and haven't been great on tracking all of the most recent documents, but if we're gonna be making those comparisons, we should probably be looking at contrasting the village commercial and the gateway against the 2 neighborhoods and having like all 4 proposals documents together in one sitting to then be able to cross-reference easily for the next meeting.
Well, so we will eventually do that. Keep in mind that those documents have not been approved by the select board yet. So the documents that you want to look at, if you want to start doing that, are the documents that we approved at our last meeting. So on 2/15, we approved a package that went to the select board, has now gone to the select board. It has the 2 RC districts, the 2 bylaw amendments, a complete red line copy of the zoning, and a clean copy of the changes that we made. So the easiest thing to look at is probably the clean copy of the complete set of changes that we made.
And
So those documents you can look at, but keep in mind, not finalized yet, and the select board may have things to say about them, and other visitors to their public hearing process may have things to say about them.
and they're on the website for for interested parties. We can go to there, we can go to the February 15th meeting and,
Go-
and.
Go to
and
the archives, the 2:15 meeting.
Everybody involved here can bring those up easily in preparation for the
Exactly.
documents sent out in this meeting and be prepared to talk about that.
Yep. That'd be great. Josh has not put these documents on the agenda for the select board yet, but there probably will be in the next month. The town meeting was interfering this time. They might be on the second March meeting of the select board, or they'll be into April. Discussions have been happening with the affordable housing community, the nonprofits, that I've been involved with, along with the housing committee, select board members. So some issues have been brought up there that they would like to see. So we'll see where that goes, and if that comes into the hearing process that the select board will be holding for those documents.
But
So-
that really won't be until well after town meeting.
I mean, there's 20th, they'll meet on the 20th of March, and then they'll have 2 meetings in April. It'll be one of those. The ARPA committee is coming to them during that time too, so it's going to be a really busy time for the select board, especially if they're actually going to read our documents, which may be challenging for them. Anyway.
Yeah.
Virginia, quick question. Is
Yeah.
it just your sense of what the nonprofit housing groups see that Richmond's doing or not doing? Got any feel from where they think we are? We at square one or?
So Champlain Housing Trust and Cathedral Square,
Square, yeah.
their people who run those organizations are just always looking for opportunities to create affordable housing.
Yeah.
So, the select board, some select board members had reached out to them. So they are looking at our documents to see if they feel that they're helpful to being able to create affordable housing.
Mhm.
The housing committee is is engaged in making a list of any places that people can think of that possibly either supported senior housing that we perceive there might be more enthusiasm for in Richmond based on the housing consultant's report, supported senior housing, or other levels of affordable housing. The housing committee is trying to scope out where these might happen and make a plan leading in that direction. So it's on the select board's agenda apparently to try to move affordable housing forward or supported senior housing. So anyway, I'll keep you all posted as when stuff comes up and we can discuss it here also. I mean, we should definitely be in the loop, obviously. All right, Mark, where's your motion?
Thank you. Yeah, I would like to make a motion to adjourn for the evening.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Allison is seconding. All right, all in favor should say aye. Or raise your
Aye.
hand.
Aye.
The dog is voting
Aye.
also.
Very good. Dogs can vote.
He wants to
All
go
right.
out.
So the motion passes. Thank you, Gary and others for coming, and
Thank you.
Yes.
hopefully stay involved in this conversation.
Thank you, Virginia. Great job with no support.
Oh, great. Thanks.
Thank
Yes,
you all.
Virginia. Thank you very much. And
Yeah,
thank you for
nice.
helping me
Yes.
get through my computer choices here.
Okay, Allison. So maybe for
Glad to
next
meet
time
you.
you'll be able to do this, but always call if you can't
It's a
do it.
little bit different every time. And I don't know, My
had trouble
computer
too.
just started doing weird stuff.
No, I had trouble too. I understand completely. It was-
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
That's why I was so late
Computers.
logging in myself. I was here early, but it took me
Computers.
forever to work through that. I'm yeah, I'm hampered when it comes to digital.
Great. Well, thanks for coming, Mark, anyway, and getting
made it.
through.
Thank you.
All
All
right,
right, have a
stand
great night,
adjourned,
everyone.
adjourned at 9:10. Bye.
Bye, everybody.